Universal Studios Hollywood combines a real working movie studio with some of the most famous theme park franchises in the world. But with a relatively small ride collection, limited space, and several attractions that rely heavily on screens, just how good is Universal Studios Hollywood really? Let's find out in today's video. Hey everyone, welcome back to Looporama. In today's video, I'm sharing my unfiltered thoughts on Universal Studios Hollywood, the good, the bad, and the future of the park. And before we get started, if you enjoy honest theme park reviews like this, please consider subscribing, it really helps the channel out. Universal Studios Hollywood originally began as a way for visitors to tour the real Universal backlot, and that working movie studio still defines the park today. Unlike most major theme parks, it was not built on one large and mostly flat piece of land. It is now squeezed between the active film studio, surrounding neighborhoods, and hills of Los Angeles. This has resulted in one of the most unusual theme park layouts in the world. The park is divided between an upper lot and a lower lot, connected by a series of enormous escalators that descend the side of the hill. They are some of the most distinctive parts of the park. From the escalators, you get impressive views across the studio, the surrounding area, and some of the park's attractions. The upper lot contains the main entrance, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Springfield, The Secret Life of Pets, and more of the park's family attractions. The lower lot is much smaller and kinda tightly squeezed in, but contains several of the biggest rides, including Jurassic World, Revenge of the Mummy, Transformers, and the Super Nintendo World area. Moving between the two levels can consume a surprising amount of time. It is usually best to complete several lower lot attractions together rather than constantly traveling back and forth. In terms of atmosphere, Universal Studios Hollywood is not always consistent. Some areas are extremely immersive. Hogsmeade, for example, is beautifully themed, Springfield is colorful and instantly recognizable, and Super Nintendo World surrounds you with movement and imagery taken directly from the games. Elsewhere, the park openly embraces its identity as a movie studio. You can see large soundstage-style buildings, backstage structures, production facilities, and more. The old Hollywood Main Street sets the tone well. It gives off a feeling you would expect from a studio-themed park, and I love the fountain up front as well as the old-school Universal sign just outside the park entrance. Aside from being divided into an upper and lower lot, Universal Studios Hollywood is relatively compact, at least when you exclude the enormous backlot covered by the studio tour. That can be convenient, but it can also contribute to the feeling that the park is perhaps slightly incomplete as a major theme park destination, especially for somewhere this iconic that welcomes around 9 million visitors a year. Before the upcoming edition of Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift, the park also clearly lacked a true destination thrill ride. Revenge of the Mummy is fun, but it is not a major signature coaster. The launch is snappy, the indoor setting is nice and creepy, and the dark ride section creates a wonderful atmosphere and is themed really well. However, the attraction is still relatively short, some of the scenery and effects are beginning to look dated, and the Hollywood version is generally considered the weakest of the Mummy coasters. To me, the horror theme also suggests a more intense experience than the ride actually delivers. It is ultimately still a good family thrill coaster, and that is not necessarily a problem, but it meant the park previously had no major roller coaster. Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift appears to solve that problem beautifully. As of recording, the coaster has begun technical rehearsals but has not officially opened, so I obviously cannot properly review that experience. Visually though, Universal seems to have done an excellent job. The drifting ride vehicles look genuinely unique, the trains themselves look phenomenal, and the layout appears to have a good length to it. The dual loading and unloading station should also help provide a decent capacity. And not unimportantly, the coaster already looks iconic as it crosses above the escalators. Even after Hollywood Drift, however, I still think the park could benefit from one or two additional major attractions. And now, that does not necessarily mean building several enormous roller coasters. The park has serious limitations involving space, noise, and its proximity to residential neighborhoods, but a few more big rides or maybe even a couple of compact, well-themed flat rides could help fill out the lineup of the park and provide some extra capacity. The lower lot demonstrates both the strengths and weaknesses of the park's lineup. Transformers The Ride 3D is one of Universal's stronger screen-based dark rides. The combination of physical scenery, enormous screens, and moving ride vehicles can be extremely effective. At certain points, it becomes difficult to identify where the real sets end and where the screens begin. The ride succeeds in making you feel directly involved in the action. The problem is that it is almost entirely action. The experience jumps from one explosion and fight into another without giving the story or writers much room to breathe. I know this is Transformers and it should be a bit of an action-packed ride, but it would benefit enormously from one short, quieter sequence where you narrowly escape and move carefully through an environment before being discovered again. Without variation, the action becomes difficult to follow and can also cause motion sickness. It is still a very impressive attraction, but 5 minutes of non-stop action in your face is a bit much. Jurassic World, though, is, I believe, an amazing water ride and one of the most complete attractions in the park. The screen-based aquarium section of the ride works surprisingly well in person. The physical sets are very impressive, and the attraction builds naturally towards its final drop. Some of the animatronics and effects could already benefit from some TLC, but the overall experience remains very strong. A major water attraction is a much needed ride in a Southern California climate, and the splashdown adds kinetic energy to the lower lot. At the back of the lower lot, you have Super Nintendo World. And look, I really wanted to love this land. There are many individual elements that look fantastic. The spinning coins catch and reflect the sunlight beautifully. There's movement almost everywhere you look, and a lot of the scenery generally appears to have come directly out of the games. You walk through the warp pipe entrance to be transported into this incredibly colorful world, filled with moving platforms, characters, blocks, and coins. It photographs extremely well. It looks great in videos. But while actually standing inside the land, I did not find it particularly, let's say, pleasant. The Hollywood version is extremely compact and can feel a little like a concrete box with basically no shade. Even outside of the hottest days of the year, it still feels quite warm, crowded, and not always especially pleasant to spend time in. And honestly, I legit think the Hollywood version looks specifically better in photos and videos than it does in person anyways. Some of the finishing around the land is not as polished as I had expected. The surrounding walls look kind of like cheap panels, and offices and other real-world buildings remain visible from different angles. Mount Beanpole specifically appears to have been positioned to try and conceal the office tower behind it. But from the entrance, it is seemingly misaligned and barely covers it at all. The sideline becomes less noticeable once you move further into the land, but it still weakens that initial reveal. And now, I know Hollywood obviously had a much smaller and more difficult plot of land to work with when compared with the Japanese or Orlando versions. And I also know that it's a land meant for kids. And I also understand why compromises had to be made. But I just don't think that the final result is quite as immersive or amazing as the hype surrounding it had led me to expect. Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge is the only attraction here, and it is unfortunately another disappointment for me. There are physical sets and pieces of scenery that look very good, but the ride itself felt slow, sluggish, and awkwardly paced. The augmented reality visor did not look or work particularly well for me. The gameplay was just and with so much happening at once, I spent too much time trying to do well with the game rather than taking in the ride. Some of the visuals were also less convincing in person than they appear in footage. Rainbow Road is lit too brightly and looks surprisingly cheap and lackluster to me, while I had expected that section to be my favorite on the ride. The ride becomes more fun once you understand the gameplay and know where to look, but even after doing it a bunch of times, I simply do not think it is a particularly strong ride. As for the power-up bands, I have very mixed feelings about them as well. They cost more than $40 before tax, and honestly, I think I mainly bought one because I wanted to get the full land experience, as the bands allow you to interact with blocks and play several mini games around the area. And to be fair, those games generally look good and work well. They are not completely effortless either, so kids still have to time their movements properly, and the Bowser Jr. challenge is quite well done. But it still feels like an additional pay while inside an already expensive theme park. You need to purchase the band to participate in the interactive elements and eventually unlock the Bowser Jr. game. And I cannot help feeling that if Disney introduced a similar system on top of all of their already paid extras, people would absolutely rip them to shreds for it, and perhaps rightfully so. Nonetheless, the band itself is a nice souvenir, and I understand why people enjoy collecting them and using them throughout the land. But personally, I would not purchase another one. Honestly, I kind of regret purchasing mine, and I won't bother bringing it back. Kids and bigger Mario fans may appreciate the ride and the power-up band more than I did, even though I also grew up with the franchise. But speaking purely from my own experience, neither really worked for me. Overall, Super Nintendo World contains some really clever ideas and several elements that look fantastic. While I might have sounded negative, I do not think it is a really bad area at all. And I know that many others in fact, enjoy the land a lot more than I did. Leaving the lower lot and heading back upstairs takes you towards more of the park's family attractions. The Secret Life of Pets off the leash is one of the strongest. Kids can enjoy the characters and story, while adults can appreciate the sets, effects, and the amount of effort that went into the experience. The queue is arguably one of the best parts of the attraction. It takes you through several highly detailed rooms and apartments. The attraction itself uses a very good mixture of physical sets and screens. The screens usually blend naturally into the environment rather than completely replacing it. It is exactly the kind of family attraction Universal Studios Hollywood needed. Nearby, you also have Despicable Me Minion Mayhem and Super Silly Funland. I personally have not done Minion Mayhem here, but these attractions still help give the upper lot a more complete offering for kids. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter, in which Hogsmeade and Hogwarts come alive, meanwhile remains one of the park's best themed areas. The curved street naturally draws you further into the land, while Hogwarts appears in the distance on top of the rockwork. From the entrance, the forced perspective works extremely well and makes the castle seem much larger and further away than it actually is. The village itself is beautifully designed. The buildings lean in different directions, snow covers the rooftops, and the entire street has a slightly dark, crowded, and magical atmosphere. Most importantly, it feels like it came straight out of the movies. Once you reach the castle, its actual scale becomes slightly more obvious, and the large show building besides Hogwarts is slightly visible. Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey is the main attraction here, and 10 years after the Hollywood version opened, and 16 years after the original opened in Orlando, it remains a genuinely amazing ride. The queue through Hogwarts is fantastic, the moving portraits still look extremely convincing, and walking through locations such as Dumbledore's office and the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom makes the queue feel like an attraction by itself. On the ride itself, the Kuka arm system still creates movement that feels completely different from most other dark rides. The screen domes occasionally become too obvious, and you can sometimes see where the projected scenes begin and end, but the physical sections remain excellent. The dragon, the bridge, and especially the Dementors are all very well done. The first time a Dementor flew right past me felt like one of the coolest effects on any dark ride I've done. It is a relatively simple idea, but the figure passes so close to the ride vehicle that it genuinely feels as though you could reach out and touch it. Or that it could reach out and touch you, or that it could suck your soul out. I don't know. Forbidden Journey remains intense, unique, and simply unlike anything else. Though I do think an upgrade to some of the projections and screens in the future could go a long way. Flight of the Hippogriff next door is not the best themed coaster in the world, and it is over pretty quickly, but it fulfills its purpose as a cute family coaster that fits quite naturally into Hogsmeade. Besides the 3 broomsticks, which I feel is a pretty good theme park restaurant, there is the famous butterbeer. It is a bit too sweet for me, but if you've always wanted to try one, here's your chance. The area remains one of Universal Hollywood's strongest areas. It contains an excellent headline attraction, a decent family coaster, good food, and some of the park's most immersive theming. Springfield, on the other hand, represents a different side of Universal, and possibly one that will not remain at the park for much longer. To give some personal backstory, I have more than just a soft spot for The Simpsons. I genuinely love the show, especially the original 9-ish seasons. I used to watch it with my mom when I was younger, and I still remember The Simpsons movie coming out and absolutely loving it. So I really enjoy being in Springfield. The land is colorful, funny, and filled with recognizable locations and characters from the show. Unlike Orlando's version of Springfield, this version only has the Simpsons ride. And that ride has been showing its age for a while now. The ride system is quite loud, the movement can feel kind of rough, and it is notorious for making some riders motion sick. However, I still personally think the ride is genuinely really funny. The pre-shows are perhaps slightly dated, but the story, jokes, and character writing still get a lot of laughs. I'm not sure I would prioritize riding this ride every visit, but I would still be very sad to see Springfield disappear. But with Disney now owning The Simpsons and the ride becoming increasingly dated, it seems unlikely that the area will remain at Universal for much longer. I could understand replacing the ride itself, but I still hope The Simpsons receives another physical theme park presence somewhere in the future. Now, the most important attraction at Universal Studios Hollywood is not a roller coaster or a dark ride. It is, of course, the world famous studio tour. The studio tour is the heart and soul of the entire park. Universal Studios Hollywood exists because of it, and even as the theme park continues to expand, I believe the tour should always remain central to the park's identity and overall experience. You are traveling through an actual working movie studio, seeing sets, props, and locations that have been used across several generations of film and television. Whether you recognize something from Back to the Future, American Psycho, The Good Place, Nope, or countless others, there is something beloved for every guest to recognize. That history gives the experience an authenticity that a normal theme park attraction cannot recreate. I also love that much of the tour is still presented by a live guide. There are pre-recorded sections throughout, but having an actual person narrating the tour helps preserve the feeling that you are exploring a real functioning studio. Not every stage ride portion along the route is equally good. The King Kong section is okay, it's not terrible, but it also isn't one of the most memorable parts of the tour. Now, what was genuinely terrible, on the other hand, was Fast and Furious Supercharged. It is obnoxiously loud, the screens did not look convincing, the movement is unpleasant, and the entire thing made even me, who never gets nauseous. Even the music felt like it was trying to blow out my eardrums. The fact that Universal Studios Florida turned this into a standalone attraction is beyond me. But still, one terrible section does not ruin the entire studio tour. The tour is much bigger than any single screen-based section, and the actual studio locations and history remain amazing to see and ride through. It is also the studio tour that helps make the park feel like a full-day destination. When you only look at the ride collection, the park is surprisingly small, but once you include an experience that can take around an hour, Waterworld, and just the time spent traveling between the upper and lower lots, it can still turn into a full-day park. I unfortunately did not manage to see Waterworld myself, so I cannot personally review it, but it is widely regarded as one of the park's signature experiences, not to be missed even though I personally missed it. I will still say that overall Universal Studios Hollywood is not cheap, especially when you consider that there is still a relatively small number of rides. But if you are interested in movies, television, and Universal's major franchises, there is very little else in the world that directly compares with this park. If you are looking for the largest roller coaster collections, the value of the park becomes much harder to justify, even if it will soon have its standout ride in Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift. But the park also contains several genuinely great attractions. Jurassic World is a phenomenal water ride, Forbidden Journey remains excellent, and Secret Life of Pets is one of the best family attractions Universal has built. And the studio tour gives the entire park an identity and sense of history that no other theme park could copy. Universal Studios Hollywood is part theme park, part movie studio, and part strange collection of escalators built into the hillside. It is flawed and sometimes more cramped than it should be, but it is also iconic, historically important, and completely unique. Now that was it for today's video. I would love to know your thoughts on Universal Studios Hollywood. Do you agree with me about Super Nintendo World? And what do you think the park should add next? And if you enjoyed this video, liking the video and subscribing would really help the channel out. Thank you for watching. That's all folks. I'll see you on the next one on Looporama.